I am so happy to kick off this formation this morning in celebration of Sandy's 5 years here with us at Holy Communion. What an incredible 5 years it has been, and we are thrilled that he joined us 5 years ago and continue to be thrilled today. We have got a short little program, so to speak, to go through this morning that we are going to celebrate all of our many accomplishments during these 5 years and look forward to the great things that we have in store at the Church of the Holy Communion, because as we all know, it's a great time to be at Holy Communion, right? So we'll get started with that. I am going to ask John Lewis to come up here and give a few remarks. John, if you will.
All right. So before we get started, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes and thank Ann Morgan and her team, Sarah Cowens, Mary Cole Ford, Vance Lewis, Elizabeth Coldiron, Jane Roberts. Did I leave anybody out? I think that was a team. They've been working for several weeks to put this together, so they're responsible for this, and they've done great work, and I just wanted to thank them for that. So several months ago, Sandy and I were meeting at one of our regular kind of one-on-ones, and I mentioned to him, I said, it's just hard to believe you've been here 5 years. And I said, I think it's time for you to have your portrait done. And I said, I think you're going to make it. I think, we're pretty certain you're going to be here, and you seem happy. And so as we were talking about it and talking about how we might present the portrait, the conversation really turned towards how much we had really accomplished since 2013. And it's just really kind of overwhelming when you think about it. And so that's how this event evolved today, and it's the reason that we chose to do it. I mean, we obviously would like to present his portrait, but really what we'd like to talk about this morning is we wanted to celebrate some of the things that we've done collectively over the last 5 years. And so Ann Morgan had asked me if I would just highlight a few of the things that have moved us forward in the last 5 years, mainly because it just, it feels so much different. It just feels so much more energetic, and I feel so much more energized, and I feel like we're really in such a fortunate place to be where we are now. So one of the most significant changes that I have seen in the last 5 years really goes back to our financial position. The bottom line is we're a church, we're a business, just like any other business, and if you don't have the money to do things, then that's an issue. And so if you look at where we were back in 2013, we were in an okay position. We had about $1.3 million in pledges and gifts, but you fast forward to where we are now, and we've got a little over $1.7 million in pledges and gifts. That's a 23% increase from where we were just 5 years ago. And that really is tremendous progress, and it's a big deal, particularly in a nonprofit setting. And that doesn't include any of the pledges and gifts that we have received related to the capital campaign. So I think that's a big accomplishment. And because we've been able to raise our giving levels, it's allowed us to do a lot of things to build our staff and to build our programs. Many of you may remember Randy McCloy, right when Sandy got here, was kind of the Lone Ranger for a long time. And you look at where we are 5 years later, we've now got a rector, we've got not one but two associates, we've got a deacon. In just 4 weeks, we welcome our newest associate, Jonathan Chesney. I think he starts in October. 21 days, 3 weeks. 3 weeks, all right. So, to see such a talented clergy who drive a lot of the energy and activity in our parish is something that just really makes me proud. We have an outstanding administrative staff who kind of make it all happen behind the scenes. In particular, we've welcomed some new positions around hospitality. Elizabeth Coldiron, if you haven't met her, just does a phenomenal job welcoming new families and integrating new families into the parish. We've got 2 communication staff who create great content. They've raised our graphic design capabilities. We've got 2 assistant musician positions. And probably one of the most amazing developments has been in our music program. We all enjoy a great choir. Last year, many of you were here when we enjoyed an amazing service with section leaders from the Memphis Symphony Orchestra and the Rhodes Women's Choir. I heard a lot of positive feedback and just a lot of great comments on that service. Our children's choir is as strong as it's ever been. It's tripled in size over the last year. Our youth program continues to remain strong. We've got a strong new leader in Carter, who is continuing to lead an already great program that had been shepherded for many years by Matthew Earhart. Our athletic program is one of the most active in the city. We have about 1,000 children who register each year, and it's just a phenomenal draw for new families. And our Book It 5K, which is, I think, 7 years strong this year, is on track to raise just as much money in its 0K format this year as it has in prior years. But to me, one of the most obvious signs of progress has to be our capital projects work. It's something, at least in my opinion, that has brought more energy involvement than just about any other activity that we've undertaken, definitely in the last 5 years and probably in the last 30 years. But both the school and the church are enduring a number of inconveniences right now, and that will continue on for at least another year. But at the end of this, I think what we can expect is to have new facilities that will allow us to do a lot more than we ever thought we could possibly do. I remember many years ago when Holy Communion was just scraping around to do basic maintenance work, and now here we are on the verge of this whole new ministry space and a family life center. And so one of the things that I just continue to be impressed with every day is having this very dedicated group of people, both parishioners and staff, who have collaborated very closely with St. Mary's and have invested a lot of time and effort into a lot of the details that we don't even hear about, that will, I think, give us some facilities that we'll be really proud of and that will really carry us well into the future. And I have to tell you, St. Mary's has been a phenomenal partner to work with. They really have been great to work with. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was around our strategic plan, because we haven't really talked about that quite as much. Having a big project like the one that we have going on right now is great. And one of the things that Sandy and I had some concern about was that we would do this project, we would spend all this time and effort, and we would focus on it for the next 2 years, and then we would look up, and we would have taken our eyes off what our core mission is, and we really didn't want that to happen. And so at our vestry retreat in 2017, we spent a lot of time with the vestry beginning to develop sort of our mission and our vision, with the idea that we would kind of evolve this into a full strategic plan. And so in just the last couple of weeks, we've kicked off our first strategy committee, which you're going to hear more about, and it's working to develop a full-scale strategic plan, and we'll hopefully roll that out at the annual meeting this coming year. But I really couldn't be more excited about that, and I could not be more grateful for Marlene Shaw's leadership in this area. So from my perspective, this has just been a great 5 years. I mean, I understand we've got a number of things ahead of us that we have yet to do. We've got the Nave project in front of us. We've got stewardship planning that's coming up. We've got work to do around developing future generations of parishioners. We've got our strategic plan to wrap up, but I'm really energized by our progress, and I'm really excited about the next 5 years. So I really appreciate everybody coming out this morning and celebrating what we've done together, and just thank you for being here.
Next, we have Albert Throckmorton, who is an institution at this point already at Holy Communion and at St. Mary's. For those of you all who don't know, he is the head of school at St. Mary's and has been the head of school since 2012 and was the assistant head of school before that. I have seen the relationship between Sandy and Albert grow over these 5 years, and I know that Sandy very much trusts Albert. He is a trusted friend, trusted advisor. There is a mutual respect between them that has allowed the relationship between Holy Communion and the school to grow and thrive, and I think is in large part the capital campaign, the success of the capital campaign has been at least in part due to the relationship between the two of them. We are very appreciative of you being here this morning on your probably 7th day of the week to be in the building. Albert?
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Blair. It's a real privilege to be invited to be part of this celebration. St. Mary's and Holy Communion have a long history, which, if divided into 5-year increments, we'd have over 13 chapters so far in our book. And like a good story, each chapter unfolds important events and builds on a previous narrative. And there are a lot of people, faces in this room that I personally know have been part of those previous chapters. And Sandy and I are beholden to a lot of strong work that has preceded us, that's made our work easier, and it's a pleasure to be with you. But Sandy and I agree that these past 5 years have been particularly remarkable, if we do say so ourselves. The church and the school that you welcomed here, and I see there's an outline, that you welcomed here in 1953, we are now doing some things that we have never done before, certainly never done before together. First, it's impossible for me to describe the growth of the school and church relationship without using the words we and us and our. And that's really, I think, the part of the story that I'm bringing today. I'll hope that you will hear that as part of the story, not as the whole story. Sandy and I occasionally have an agenda that we call the yours, mine, and ours list. And we worked through that. But we had a great day on Monday a week ago when Sandy came up to me. He says, "It's so good to see you and not have a list." But the story, part of the story of the last 5 years certainly has included the growth of the hour part of that. Cheney Parish Hall gives us a good view of the most, this is for Sandy, the most concrete of our accomplishments over the past 5 years. If you crane your neck around there, I'm sorry, Sandy and I can not get too far, either of us, without making a joke. And in fact, the course of our relationship was forged on the very first day that school was in session and Sandy was here. And it was I'll spare you, but the joke ended with a supercalifragilistic hexed with halitosis. That's Sandy and me right there. But literally, one can see now the concrete foundations of the shared gym are being poured right now this month. And I believe this is the first time that we have built something together, and it's a symbol of many other remarkable moments, as John mentioned, over the last 5 years. And of course, agreeing to build something together is one thing. Agreeing to pay for it, well, that took some more doing. And I do think that the agreement and the will to work together generously is another significant bookmark that Sandy and I share. We also have invested personally in each other's success, and we have the pledge cards to prove it. Underneath the concrete, of course, Sandy and I were guided by a written agreement that steadies our shared life, and Sandy and I have lived within that written document. We've also added to it over the past 5 years, and because of Sandy's relationship and his leadership, we found new ways of making decisions. You should know that over the last 5 years, the church and the school have made, I was trying to calculate, easily 1,000, maybe thousands of decisions together about designs, about schedules, about dreams. Sandy is, and I really appreciate this about him, Sandy is so attentive to who attends those meetings, about opening in prayer. In fact, if we have a meeting that uncharacteristically does not start immediately with prayer, even our construction folks will say, "Are we going to pray?" Which is a great sign. Sandy's attentive about coming to consensus in a meeting, and of course, if you know him, about following it up with a well-written 2-page memo. This is also for you. Before we raised our site, Sandy raised our sights to be more agreeable about how we make decisions. We aim now, and this is largely Sandy's leadership, we aim now for unanimity, not just to agree, not just to have a decision, but to be as unanimous as possible when we leave the room. Sandy and I often say and truly believe that we are stronger together. By necessity, much of the growth of the Holy Communion St. Mary's relationship has been the two of us working personally together. And because of that, we believe that the character of many of the other points of connections between our staffs and our communities are changing too. And the school very much appreciates, and on their behalf, I want to express to you how much we appreciate the demonstration and being taught about what it means to be a good neighbor. Since we are here at your invitation and as your guests. I want to close by celebrating one thing that may not be as visible to parishioners. It's not as concrete as a foundation. It's not as practical as a utility cost-sharing agreement. Sandy works hard to be a friend. I know Sandy. The girls know Sandy. They see him in chapel often. They hear him. They groan at his jokes, and mine. And we do joke chapel together. I think this is fairly new for in the last 5 years. Is the larger community knows about us as individuals, but they also know us as a team, which I think is something new and commendable. Sandy and I came in as new leaders at about the same time, but with very different ages. And I was thinking about this recently, Sandy, and I've wondered if the fact that Sandy is at least 10 years more mature than his age, and that I'm at least 10 years delayed in my maturity, if that isn't part of our compatibility. If I can be serious for a moment, it's a truism, but it's lonely at the top of an organization because you don't have most people don't have a ready peer that they can share with, and Sandy and I have been able to find that with each other, even with excellent spouses and excellent vestries and excellent boards. And sort of like a married couple agreeing to wallpaper a room together. Okay. That means something in my family. A joint venture doesn't always promise to be the fun that it first sets out to be, but you should know something, that Sandy and I like each other. And that goodwill should be listed, even though it can't be measured, it should be listed as an accomplishment. Sandy begins his emails to me with friend, and he means it. We like each other's company. We finish occasionally each other's sentences. In meetings, we protect each other's interests. And as I said, we had the fortune of taking on leadership at about the same time, and we each had a very clear mandate from our leadership, looking at Ben and Bill, and it sounded something like, get it done. And in the last 5 years, we are getting it done, and I couldn't have done it without Sandy, and I don't think Sandy could have done it without me. It would have stalled at times if it had not been for Sandy's commitment to being a friend. In these last 5 years, the church has accomplished so much, and living in the shadow nearby, it's a real delight to see that. For the girls' part, the school's part, we have been ministered by you, and we thank you. We've been befriended specifically by Sandy, and we thank you for that. And because Sandy is my pal in punnery, and his picture is just about to be revealed, I'll just close by saying, hanging is too good for him.
I think the picture of the two of them from peeking out between the studs is a perfect encapsulation of their friendship. I just want to say a couple more things before I let our wonderful rector get up and address you all. 5 years ago, when we were in a completely different place as a church, Tom Cowens and I were senior warden and junior warden, respectively, and we undertook with the search, or the not search committee, it wasn't a search committee at the time, search for the priest in charge, very seriously the search that resulted in our landing Sandy. One of the days that I remember the fondest, we met at John Lewis's office out east, and Tom and I took Sandy out to St. Columba to look around, and he still teases me because I'm traipsing around St. Columba in my suit. Sandy had handled himself so beautifully that day, and I kept thinking to myself, how is he as young as he is? It's amazing. He has a wonderful mind for business and yet the passionate heart of a priest. As we parted that day, I ended up taking Sandy actually back here to meet with some more church folks. And I don't know why, but I stopped, and I don't know that I've ever told you this. I stopped in the car and watched as he was walking in. I think it's being a mother, I wanted to make sure he got in safely. At any rate, as I was about to pull off, I realized that just as he got to the doors of the church, he stopped just slightly and bowed his head and sat there silently for a moment. He's incredibly bright. He has a wonderful vision for this church, but he approaches everything he does with God at his side. And for that, I am most grateful, and I'm so happy that you are with us.
Hey, y'all. This is a very strange day for me, but thank you for sharing it with me. 5 years ago, y'all took a bit of a chance. It was a challenging moment in your life, if you remember that. And the largest parish in the Diocese of West Tennessee called as its priest in charge an unmarried man who was barely 30 years old, who had been ordained for less than 3 years, and who had never before served as a rector, which raises a question. What were you thinking? There's an awful lot of room for things to go south on us here, but you trusted me, remarkably, and I trusted you, and together we trusted in God. He certainly worked things out for his greater glory. Our resources were limited in those days, a little more limited than they are now, but the vestry found some money to set aside as an Audacity Fund. Do you all remember the Audacity Fund? It was money that they put aside so that the staff and I could try some new things. What I was realizing was that we had this great staff, and they would say, well, we have all these ideas, but we can't afford to do them. And I grew tired of that response. And so the Audacity Fund was set aside so that I could say, yes, you do. Go ahead. The first thing we did was a concert on the front lawn. It seems small by comparison to some of the things we've done recently, but we went outside, we had a tent built, we had fencing around so children couldn't run into the street, and it was perfect all day until 5 minutes before concert time, when that one little errant storm cloud came over at the worst possible moment. But those of you who were there know what we did. We picked up all the stuff, and we came inside, and, for Albert, we didn't miss a beat. And I learned something about you that day, that Holy Communion is not the sort of parish that quits when the going gets tough. It would have been so much easier for us to say, friends, it's raining. Time to go home. But we didn't. The concert on the lawn gave us the confidence and ability to tackle Alleluia Be Our Measure, a 3-day weekend celebration of 3 different sacred arts that produced our parish hymn and a beautiful illumination of the text of our parish hymn. Then came Episcopal Service Corps, then the Urban Pilgrimage, and ultimately the campaign for Holy Communion. Not every day was easy. Not every idea was successful. But we never gave up. Nor did God. We took what we had, we used it as faithfully as we could, and God gave us his blessing. As both Albert and John mentioned, one of our major priorities when I arrived at Holy Communion was different kind of rebuilding here. One of the major priorities that I had when I arrived at Holy Communion was rebuilding the staff. You may recall the year when Randy was the only clergy person at Holy Communion, and then the next year when it was just you and me. Recruiting an associate rector took a lot longer than I thought, and then God sent us Hester Mathis. Hester came as a student to train for 2 years and then head out into the wider church. 4 years later, she has become my right hand and has taken responsibility for all of our programs. Slowly, the team came together and it found its stride. We have hired staff for communications, children's ministry, hospitality, children's music, youth ministry, and pastoral care all in the last 5 years. Each of these talented people have developed new ways of doing their ministry, and other churches are beginning to emulate our method. We set a vision for a renewed congregation, and we found just the right people to come and make that a reality. When I came to interview at Holy Communion for the first time, which was in March of 2013, it was on the night that Elaine Pagels was to speak at Holy Communion because they wanted to keep me very private upstairs. And so my tour of the church went like this. We walked from the Carrick room down the stairs. Mary Beth, our director of operations, was there with the key. She unlocked the door to the nave. They pulled the door open, said, "That's the nave," and then walked me out to dinner at the Racquet Club. At that dinner, though, at the Racquet Club, I learned 2 important things that were not told to me before I arrived. First, there's a school. Didn't know that. And I said to myself, well, I haven't been in a school since I graduated from mine, but I'm sure I'll figure out something. And then I learned about the gym. And those of you who were on search, I know at least Nick is here. Who else was on search that year? And Ben and Mandy. Mary Call. And Amy. Oh, we got everybody here. This is great, except Mark, who moved away, and we're just going to have to talk to him about that. So they said, we have a gym. And I said, and we probably have to do something about the gym. I said, okay, well, I'd love to see the gym. No, you don't want to go over there. And I said, no, I think we should go over there. And okay, all right, well, we'll take you on our way out to dinner. They never showed it to me. They didn't take me there. And so when I came back for that second round interview, I said to Tom Cowens, who was senior warden, if I become your rector, I will be rector from the top of the steeple to the bottom of the basement, and I'm going to see the whole facility before I accept. The story, of course, for those of you who might be newer to Holy Communion, is that for 20 years, Holy Communion and St. Mary's had been having conversations about what to do with the Barth Gymnasium. The search committee made it clear to me that there was no more time to lose. Holy Communion and St. Mary's needed a plan. Our friends at St. Mary's set the tone for collaboration as soon as I arrived. One of their trustees' stated goals for the 2013-2014 academic year was helping me to be successful as the rector of Holy Communion. And Albert Throckmorton was ready, we didn't coordinate this at all, was ready to shed words like yours and mine so that we could start using the word ours. Whoever could have imagined what Holy Communion and St. Mary's would be able to achieve in such a short time? I'm reminded of what God says to Sarah in the book of Genesis. Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? Throughout all of this, I've grown in my own confidence and leadership. You have provided me with world-class mentors and training. You've given me room to make mistakes, and you've supported me as I found my own style and voice. Most importantly of all, you supported me as I met and married my wife, Jessica, and you have been more than gracious to us in this new chapter of our lives together. There are too many people to thank and recognize for their extraordinary contributions over the last 5 years, but I would like to take a moment to highlight the specific contributions of 4 individuals, the 4 people who have served as senior warden during my time at Holy Communion. Tom Cowens accepted leadership of Holy Communion during a challenging time of transition and was willing to sign off on the chance that you all took in calling me and to some of the crazy ideas and big projects that came up in my first 6 months. Tom and I met weekly for my first 6 months and talked on the phone almost daily. He believed in me before I believed in myself. Then came Ann Duncan. Ann is one of the most intelligent and insightful leaders that I have ever encountered. As we were developing a campus master plan and looking ahead to a capital campaign, Ann insisted that we have the best information, the best consultants, and the best plans all in place before we took any steps forward. The success of this project is the direct result of the architecture that Ann built while she was senior warden. Emily Woodside served as senior warden during the capital campaign. It would have been easy for her and for me to focus only on fundraising and architecture, but Emily never lost sight of the church's mission. She kept Holy Communion focused on program and outreach, even as she went out to ask people to support the capital campaign. And then John Lewis. John was my treasurer before he was my senior warden, and in that role, he taught me about the importance of long-term thinking. In 2013, at the end of the year, I brought John my first recommended budget increases, as we had the first of those step-ups, and John said something to me as treasurer that no treasurer in the history of the Episcopal Church has ever said to a rector. You're not spending enough money. Don't give me a plan that will get us into next year, he said at the end of 2013. Give me a plan for the next 5. John developed the financial strategy that has brought us to this moment, that has provided for the staff, and that has provided for the business. And then John has overseen the business side of the capital campaign and project with great grace. I have been overwhelmed with the quality and caliber of people who have served as wardens and officers and vestry people of this parish, who have stood with me and loved me and challenged me over these last 5 years, and I couldn't be more grateful. Next Sunday morning, we turn our eyes forward to the development of a strategic plan for our next 5 years. We need a new strategic plan for one specific reason. We finished the last one. The plan that John and I wrote when he was the treasurer 5 years ago has largely been achieved. And when we move into these new facilities, we will have so many options in front of us. We have to make sure that we choose wisely. We can't do everything. We need to make sure that the things we do, we do well. Marlene Shaw will lead us in that conversation. She does so professionally. It's a delight to be working with her on it. And everybody in the congregation has an opportunity to participate next weekend. So in this forum hour next weekend, we'll talk about strategic planning. After the 5:30 service next weekend, we'll talk about strategic planning. After the Wednesday dinner next week, we'll talk about strategic planning. And for those who might be out of town or unable to come, we'll have another opportunity for your input. I hope that you will. I don't want to prejudice that process in any way, but some folks have been asking me what I think we need to be about over the next couple of years, and I've offered this to the Strategic Planning Committee for their consideration. First, and I hate to say have a financial and architectural thing first, we need to be on top of the nave. When all of our other facilities are looking brand new, the nave is going to start to look untended, and we can't have that. It also has a number of mechanical concerns and maintenance issues that need to be dealt with in order to be a good steward of that property. The vestry is working on this now with the Church Renovations Committee and a special task force working on some of the design, and we'll be in touch with you as those plans become more solid. Second, from a pastoral perspective, I've been saying, what is Holy Communion's challenge now? What is God asking us to do? And I think what we need to learn how to do as a congregation better than we are now, though we are doing it now, is learn how to have difficult conversations with each other. We are living in one of the most polarized times in the history of our country. And the church's countercultural witness to that is to say, every person has value. Every person was made in the image of God and is worthy of a full share of human dignity. And I may disagree with you, but we need to know how to have that conversation with respect and appreciation, knowing that you came to your conclusion through goodwill and I came to my conclusion through goodwill. This is our countercultural witness. We've been doing pretty well when we've been talking about race over the last few years and having some really honest conversations. But questions around human sexuality, social inequality, and contemporary issues in our society still seem to be challenging. And I think this is our invitation. This is what's next for us. These will not be easy priorities to tackle, but they are important ones. They are, as I often say in opening prayers, particularly around construction, I've discovered, they are tasks which will demand our best efforts. But as the angel said to Mary, nothing will be impossible with God. My 8th ordination anniversary is coming up later this month. When I was ordained 8 years ago at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, my bishop gave my classmates and me a word of advice. You must love your people, he said. I'm going to say it again. You must love your people. I'm going to say it for a third time, lest you miss it. You must love your people. I thought that I understood what he meant in his vesting room in New York, but I didn't. I thought I understood what that meant when I left my previous congregation to come here in 2013, but I understood it then only in part. These last 5 years have taught me what it means for a priest to love his people. Please know that I mean it when I say that I love you. More importantly, please know that I believe in you, and that I believe that even greater things are ahead for us in this place. Amen. Why don't you introduce it? We'll pull the thing.
All right, we're ready. So what we've all been waiting for, right? The unveiling. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Can I say something about it?
Please.
So may I say something about this portrait? About a year ago or so, when John said that it was time to put me on the wall, I said, well, does it have to be exactly the same as all the others? Because I hope that when you think back over my season of ministry here, the reflection is it wasn't the same. It was built on ancient tradition and was yet new. St. Augustine gives us that phrase, ever ancient, ever new. And there are just a couple of things that I'd like to tell you about it. I have so enjoyed working on this project. Keith Renard from Skipworth Photography was the artist behind it, and Bryna Bobick, a parishioner and a professor of art education at the University of Memphis, was right there as we planned it out and thought through everything. What I'd like to point out, just a few things, are this is the first rector's portrait taken outside the walls of the church, which I would like to say is where the church's ministry happens. Not inside the church, but outside the church. You'll also see that there is vegetation, there are trees, there are bushes that are alive and green. We made sure to take it at the height of the season so that things looked alive, which I hope further symbolizes what we have become in these last 5 years. Some of you will remember the blue stole that I'm wearing. It was the first set of vestments that we commissioned during my tenure at Holy Communion. It's a set I'm incredibly proud of. It is blue for Advent, because Advent is a season of hope and expectation and new things and watching God do marvelous, marvelous things in our midst. And last, it's blue to represent the historical color in art of the Blessed Virgin Mary, who, when God asked her to do something hard, said yes. This is the painting or the image that I offer to you. It is a privilege to be invited to have my image hanging alongside Eric Greenwood and Harold Barrett and Reynolds Cheney and Gary Jones and Mark Rutenbar. I'm also deeply honored to be pictured among the likes of Randy McCloy and Cy Hill, who are paragons for all of us of selflessness and commitment. All of these people did faithful and good work for God at Church of the Holy Communion, and I'm just privileged to be building on the foundations that they laid. I hope you like it. I surely do.
That is it. I think Sandy and John might entertain some questions if we have discussion things. John will take care of that. So it's good delegation. Thank you. If we have any questions, John just gave me the most surprised look. If not, please feel free to go back and enjoy the nice breakfast, coffee, whatever, fellowship. We've still got a little bit of time.
Thank you all very much.
John over there? Ready? Definitely. I know, and I was worried too. We dropped him off and drove home that night, right? I really do think.
Good job.
You got your characteristic diet.
Good job. Really good job. It's a great idea. It's a good job. Y'all all did a wonderful job. I told them that the blue also represents St. Mary's. He missed that point.
Yeah.
It would have been a good time to make it. With all these
Well,
chairs.
Ben, you know I'm always this close to telling that
Well,
story about, should we do this because we love St. Mary's? And Ben's voice, yes!
So good.
I think it's Robert. We drove home from Knoxville that night. I was like, he did not know us. We were taking it to him. We never years. We left Knoxville and I cried, but not until we did Shelby County. He was like, I'm going back to the house and I'm not living here. I was just and I spent about 24 hours being blue, and I had a trip to Denver right after that. And I was gone for several days, and I came back, and I've just been busy. Yeah. But it's already over, and we chose not to, which his daddy and I thought his daddy just got not a mistake. But
It's so big here.
well, and he's got so many other
Great job. Wow.
Thank you, appreciate it. You know who organized it.
Well, I feel like I'm so glad.
And it's all about just getting people. It's about getting people. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we didn't have the staff. Thank you. Thank you for coming out in the rain. I was worried nobody was going to show up.
I did too.
Gosh, I woke up and I was like, really?
They walked in, so very
Good
good
to see you, man.
remarks,
Thank you.
great idea, really good
With
idea.
Sandy and I talked about being important.
And I was so glad that y'all did most of it.
That's how you work.
Yes, it was much more of a we feeling than sometimes I think so hard.
Well, I'm glad you heard it, because that was intended.
I mean, well, to be honest with you, when I walked in, I went, oh shit. It's gonna be a meeting.
Yeah, it was.
And that was sort of bummed out. And then instead, you got to try. Sounds good.
Well, that's the way to do it. Well, thank y'all.
Thank you for saying it.
I'm so glad you were doing it. I'm so glad you were doing it. Don't she do well? I'm gonna have her facilitate my next meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
I am.
Really well. I could.
I bet you could. And wag that finger at everybody.
Wag that finger in anybody's face. That's exactly right.